At only 25 years of age, he ordered his men to take down a Mexican Army helicopter in the town of Villa Purificación, Jalisco. It was on May 1st, 2015, when special military units from the Mexican Army were close to capturing his father, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, also known as El Mencho, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Sicarios trained by Russian mercenaries fired Soviet rocket-propelled grenades, bringing down the Eurocopter EC725 Cougar, resulting in the loss of 9 Mexican officers. Rubén Oseguera Gonzalez, also known as El Menchito, soon revealed that he was more brutal than his father. Now in a U.S. federal prison, he's paying for the crimes he committed during his brief time as the second-in-command of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. New court documents revealed the atrocities committed by El Menchito, one of the first drug traffickers to venture into fentanyl production. Fully aware of the terrible consequences this drug would have on consumers, in this episode of Illicit Investigations, we bring you new exclusive insights into the life of El Menchito as a co-leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. We reveal his dark connections with Russian mercenaries for weapons and training, and disclose why, if not arrested by Mexican authorities, he would have become the most bloodthirsty drug trafficker in Mexico. Stay tuned. Rubén Oseguera Gonzalez, El Menchito, used to brag about kidnapping and taking the lives of dozens of people. To instill fear and command respect among his friends and subordinates, he shared photos of his victims. DEA agents who worked on the prosecution of El Menchito describe him as a monster, capable of anything for power and money. Despite his young age, he inspired more fear than his father and handled significant drug and arms trafficking operations for the cartel. The brutality of El Menchito had no limits. He felt supported by his father, and their corruption network built with millions of dollars in bribes and threats to politicians, judges, police, and military commanders. He also believed that as a U.S. citizen, American federal agencies would be lenient with him, but history proved him wrong. His criminal career ended sooner than expected, and now in prison, U.S. federal prosecutors have released several details of his dark character and terrifying operations in Mexico. El Menchito was born in San Francisco, California, on Valentine's Day, 1990, but his heart is anything but sweet. At the time, his father was selling heroin on the streets of the Bay Area for the Norteños gang, having re-entered the United States illegally after being deported to Mexico months before. When El Menchito was less than 2 years old, in 1992, his father was arrested again, this time sent to a federal prison in Big Spring, Texas, on drug and gang-related charges. After 4 years in jail, in 1996, El Mencho was deported again to Mexico. But this time he decided not to return to the United States. Once there, he became a local police officer in Jalisco. Then Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, his wife, decided to fly back to Mexico with their 2 American-born kids, Ruben and Jessica. El Menchito grew up in Jalisco, witnessing his father transition from a local cop to a key member of the Menchito cartel, and eventually creating the Jalisco New Generation Cartel with the support of his powerful uncles Los Queenies, led by Abigail Gonzalez Valencia, an influential money launderer and drug trafficker who was being monitored by U.S. authorities. It was through his own uncle that El Menchito fell onto the radar of the DEA. El Menchito was a precocious child, growing up surrounded by weapons and receiving training from his father to become a cartel leader. By 2008, at just 18 years old, he had assumed significant responsibilities within the organization. Operating as though as a seasoned trafficker, intelligent and aggressive, he felt bound by no limits. He traveled to Colombia to negotiate with rival drug suppliers. In Cali, he secured deals for multi-ton shipments, transported via cargo vessels, fast boats, and submarines with the FARC guerrilla, destined for the ports of Lázaro Cárdenas, Manzanillo, and Mazatlan. In Medellin, he forged an alliance with El Clan del Golfo, a right-wing paramilitary group led by Dairo Antonio Usuga, also known as Otoniel, to supply 2 tons of narcotics weekly through aerial and maritime routes via Central America and the Caribbean. El Menchito led the establishment of CJNG offices in Colombia to oversee these extensive drug operations. FARC guerrilla members offered not only vast quantities of cocaine, but also connections with Russian mercenaries who provided military training and Soviet arms to the CJNG. Since around 2010, El Menchito coordinated with a former Russian military officer to purchase shipments of Soviet grenade and rocket launchers and arranged combat training for CJNG Sicarios. Despite his youth, his father placed immense trust in him, granting him carte blanche to make major decisions and manage tens of millions of dollars. He directed groups of Sicarios in conflicts against the Knights Templar cartel and Los Zetas in Michoacán and Colima. In 2012, he urged his father to begin manufacturing fentanyl pills marked as oxycodone. Fully aware of their potential to cause overdose deaths in the U.S., he dispatched delegates to China to obtain precursor chemicals and hire a chemist, pioneering fentanyl production in Mexico. El Menchito's actions grew increasingly reckless. According to court records, he ordered numerous kidnappings and at least 100 assassinations. Some victims were enemies. Others were cartel members he considered traitors or failures. For instance, after Mexican law enforcement seized a shipment of chemicals intended for methamphetamine production, El Menchito ordered the truck drivers to be tied up and drowned in a swimming pool. He also executed 2 men suspected of cooperating with Mexican authorities and posted photos of their bodies on social media, as noted in court records. Since 2011, El Menchito was under surveillance of the Mexican military, but the DEA lacked solid evidence against him. In 2012, U.S. federal agents were monitoring BlackBerry Messenger conversations between informants in Riverside, California, and Chicago, Illinois, with his uncle, Abigail Gonzalez Valencia. El Queenie was coordinating the reception of 300 kilos of narcotics coming from Guatemala. In the conversation, a third participant was involved, who turned out to be El Menchito. Through his uncle's BlackBerry interception, the DEA got access to more than 5,000 BBM messages implicating El Menchito in large-scale drug operations. In January 2014, El Menchito was arrested by a special unit of the Mexican Marines in Zapopan, Jalisco, but after millions of dollars in bribes and judicial corruption, he was released 10 months later. As the U.S. government gathered new evidence against him, they pressured Mexico for his recapture. In June of 2015, El Menchito was arrested again in Zapopan, just days after undergoing nose surgery to change his appearance. He was incarcerated in various maximum security prisons in Mexico, but his criminal career did not end there. From his jail cell, El Menchito continued to manage drug operations with Colombian suppliers and orchestrated the purchase of millions of dollars worth of weapons for the cartel from the United States and Europe. From .50 caliber and M60 machine guns, sniper rifles, automatic grenade launchers, to shoulder-fired rocket launchers, El Menchito coordinated massive weapons deals. He also advised his father to recruit former FARC guerrilla members to strengthen the insurgency attacks on local law enforcement across Mexico. El Menchito's brutality had no bounds, but his criminal career did. In February 2020, he was extradited to Washington, D.C. to face 4 charges of drug and weapon offenses that could result in decades of imprisonment. This story continues. This is Illicit Investigations. Subscribe now to our channel to go beyond the headlines.